welcome back. Today we're talking about Insecure Season 5, Episode 4. This episode takes place 1 week after Issa's block party, and it seems like although on the outside she's doing very well, it seems she has gotten more sponsorships. Behind the scenes, things are a bit chaotic. And I really enjoyed this episode because it really speaks to how at the end of the day we all have something to prove, and assumptions are indeed the mind killer. So the episode starts off at a beach party, and Molly, Issa, and Kelly are on their way, and I really enjoyed Kelly in this episode. And Kelly, I think, is a good example of how you really have to ask your strong friends if they're okay, because she seems to be really going through it. She quit drinking, and she's in the background. That's the thing. She's in the background, but I don't know if she's crying for help. Like, you guys let me know, but I really kind of enjoyed Kelly this episode. Molly and Issa have totally switched roles. Like, Molly used to be the one to read into things, make assumptions, but she's very, very proactive, right? Like, if Issa has a question, she goes after the answers. And so I'm enjoying kind of watching Molly, like, loosen up, not take things so, not assume things so negatively. Whereas Issa is just like the bearer of bad news, right? So she kind of goes to this block party, and you can tell that Issa came with intentions, right? Her intention was to see Nathan and get a straight answer out of him. And you see that right away. So they get to this block party, and this first encounter between Issa and Nathan is the most awkward thing I've ever seen. Like, they're kind of walking on eggshells, like she's talking about the weather. And Nathan is very standoffish in a way that is concerning, because there's a certain level of professionalism I think men give you when they can kind of see that you like them, but they don't want to talk about it. Like, there's a certain level of professionalism he's giving her, like, thank you for coming to our events, but we're not friends. Like, that was kind of the vibe that he was giving, and that's exactly what she kind of got out of it. And so that kind of sends Issa spiraling. And so throughout this entire party, she's thinking, okay, how can I talk to Nathan? And also, does he even really want to talk to me? And so everybody's chilling, relaxing. Molly's like kind of deciding between two people. Even Kelly was like, take a drink, you need to chillax. And the entire time, Issa is fixated on Nathan, right? She's looking at him, and her first assumption is that he's seeing someone else. And she kind of spots Renisha. And I like the addition of Renisha because, like, this girl is everything you kind of like. It's horrifying in that it's every girl's nightmare. So you have a crush on a guy, and this is the type of girl you imagine him to be with, or like, of course, that's his type, Because she's so vivacious, she's so valley girl. Like, I don't know, just her voice, her mannerisms. She's so nice, and she's so hot at the same time. So she's looking at her like, yeah, they must be smashing. Yeah, they must be together. And she really read into every little thing. And I think it goes to show, like, we hurt our own feelings in our head before, like, somebody else hurts our feelings. So she goes over, or she gets called over by Renisha, and she's just looking at her like damn, like, and again, I think it just speaks to the fact that we really hurt our own feelings. So Issa is comparing herself, right? This is the first thing that she does that's really kind of demoralizing her. She's comparing herself, she's feeling very bad, and a lot of the sort of issues are not just with Nathan, right? So at the start of the episode, we're seeing that, again, she's having problems at work. So it seems like she was able to organize another block party. However, the designer that she was working with from the last party had some things to say about it. And so this is causing her some stress because she just got her sponsorship. And at the same time, the guy that she likes hates her. So there's just a lot of things on her mind. And she also already has this kind of insecurity. Like, she hasn't been feeling 100%. She feels like she has something to prove. Like, she's getting older. It's time I sort myself out. And the first thing is to sort out, like, what Nathan's problem is. So just as they're kind of getting settled into this beach party, an earthquake hits, or like kind of the signs of an earthquake. And I like this sort of analogy of an earthquake because it kind of speaks to, like, what's been going on with Issa and Nathan. Like, things could explode unless they have a conversation, right? Like, the earthquake doesn't happen, but there's always, like, signs that it could happen, So I kind of liked how that was playing in the background. So they're kind of forced to leave and find a new location. And so they move over to the bar, and I love this sort of contrast between the boys in the car and the women in the car. So we get an insight into Nathan's mindset. So the guys are riding over, and they're kind of having a conversation. These guys are talking about how hot Molly is and how they're, like, kind of competing to get with her. And Nathan kind of, like, makes it known that Issa is not my girl. I don't know where her head's at. And the reason he left her in the middle of the night, because he basically didn't want to spend all night cuddling, right? He was just kind of annoyed and he wanted to leave, and he felt like the sole purpose of her even ringing him up was to cuddle. Like he was basically a stuffed animal on call. And the guys kind of rip him apart because they're like, dude, you kind of have this shoulder to cry on energy. And I get what they're saying. Like some guys, I don't know what it is, they have that shoulder to cry on energy. Like you feel like you can talk to them. And I think Nathan felt like he was being taken for granted. Like he was called as sort of, first she knew he would show up, and second, like his attitude was like, there's nothing in it for me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, what am I, one of your girls? So listening to Nathan's logic, like it did kind of hurt my feelings for Issa, because you're like, damn, like why, was it really such a bad thing that she called you to cuddle? But at the same time, I think he felt kind of used in that moment, you know? Like he felt kind of like a backup plan. And this was kind of his thinking. So I can kind of respect that. And then we move on to the girls' cars and Molly, and this was just like chaotic energy. And Issa's sitting there, she's upset. The text from this designer she worked with is just getting worse. Like her work life, just as it's getting back on track, there's some drama happening. And she's texting Molly saying, you know what, I don't think he likes me very much. He's probably dating this girl. I love how Molly was very assertive. Like she literally turns to Renisha and asks, are you Nathan? And she says no. And again, this speaks to how Molly has been working on herself. She's very proactive now. She doesn't sit in her own head. Whereas Issa is just sitting in her own head. And I thought it was funny that every answer that she got, like the first good answer was that he's not with Renisha. So this should have been a positive. And old Issa would have seen it as a positive, but because she's not in the right headspace, she just kind of said, okay, well, it must mean he's not that into me. You know what I mean? Like it just got worse and worse. Like her assumptions about herself got worse. Her sort of idea of how he thinks of her got worse. And so you can kind of tell the state of mind that she's in. It's not a very positive one. And so she's feeling very demoralized, very depressed. And what kind of triggers her to talk to him is when Molly says, what are you going to do about it? Like, are you just going to be sad? Like, what's the plan, sis? And this whole scene in the car, just a side note, like that driver was just not right. Kelly and, you know, Renisha, like again, Kelly's going through something. I don't know what it is, but she's not okay. But Molly basically kind of challenges her to sort herself out. And I don't think Issa would have asked him why he left that night unless Molly kind of got her gears turning. So we get to this second location and there's still some awkwardness. And I like how they're still tiptoeing around each other. So the whole time Nathan and Issa are just kind of like, you know when you like somebody but you don't know how to communicate with them, and you just assume the worst. Like if I talk to them, I don't want to make them feel awkward, or like they're just both kind of not sure how to read the person. And I think at one point Nathan kind of jokes like, yeah, I've been trying to read your mind, but I don't know how your mind works, sis. So finally Issa kind of blurts it out like, why did you leave me that night? And Nathan's logic was pretty sound. He was like, first of all, I didn't realize we had expectations or rules. Like you're kind of calling me just to call me, right? Like the thing with Issa is that she's been in a very long-term relationship. And I think she sees Nathan as someone who she can kind of rely on, or he kind of is somebody that she's attached herself to. But because there's no intention in this relationship, right? Like she's just calling him as a friend. There's really no communication in terms of, so I like you, you like me, like what's our plan? Where are we going from here? What are we even, you know? And Nathan was kind of making that clear. He was like, I didn't realize there were expectations. I don't really know what you want from me. Like I'm kind of like, I can't read your mind. Like you have to tell me what you want, because girl, like I'm at a loss for words. And so I think this conversation was really helpful. And I think it kind of opened up a window that allowed the two of them to kind of give each other the benefit of the doubt. And it's really funny how in that moment, we find out that Nathan isn't an angel, right? And I think we sometimes pedestalize people, especially when, like it's clear that Issa has a very high opinion of Nathan, right? Like she kind of sees him as, she keeps comparing herself like, oh, you must not be that into me. What was the problem? Was it me? And so she's really thinking it's something she did. And then we find out that the same problems that Issa has with Nathan, apparently other people have with Nathan. So Nathan invites this couple sort of midway through the episode. They're introduced, and there's some awkwardness. As soon as this couple comes through, you can tell there's some tension with the wife, and it was weird because when I saw Nathan and this, like, his high school friend or this old friend of his, I thought, oh, maybe him and the wife dated. Like, there was just something weird going on. And they're sitting there, and we find out that apparently Nathan has a history of abandoning and ghosting people. Like, he apparently left his friend to hitchhike at some point. Like, apparently, like, going out with him isn't the safest thing. And I was really surprised that as this information was coming out, like, Issa didn't take that as an opportunity to throw him under the bus. Because I thought she was gonna make a joke and say, oh, yeah, he ghosted me too. Like, I thought she would kind of take that opportunity, and she kind of defends him instead. She says, hey, like, he's not thanks to him, I've gotten roots, I've done this and that. And I think because she kind of defended him, he kind of was less defensive, like he kind of, there was a room, like there was an opportunity for her to he kind of gave her the benefit of the doubt. Like, there was some type of trust that was being rebuilt in her kind of defending him in that moment. So I thought it was really interesting that she was defending him. And I think the fact that she didn't take that opportunity again to kind of make a sly joke suggests that she really respects him. Like, she really, really thinks highly of him. And I think he kind of recognized that in that moment. So the breaking point in this episode comes just before. So I guess as they're talking about Nathan's past and all this is going on, apparently there's a party being thrown somewhere with Jason Derulo, and they're all gonna go and have fun. And so on their way there, the first sort of emergency happens. So throughout this episode, Issa has been having problems with Crenshaw, I believe, this designer that she was working with, and he's been throwing shade at her on Twitter all day. And so finally gets to a point where he's just kind of attacking her. And so she kind of does this thing where she writes out a text, and we've all done this. I've done this in the comment section. Everybody has done this to a friend, where you write out a text, but you don't send the text, right? Or you don't send the message. You just kind of write it out to vent, but you have no intention of sending it. And so she sees his comments. She writes him a message, something like, this is such a weird way of saying thank you to me. And she had no intention of sending it, I don't think. But unfortunately, she accidentally hit send. He saw it, and all hell broke loose. So she's just already stressed. This night isn't going as well as she hoped. They get to this party. Molly ditches them for this guy. And again, I appreciate Molly's sort of like carefreeness. I appreciate her, like, her vibe is more calm. Like, she seems very at peace with herself, very comfortable in her own skin. And also, she's not so concerned with what other people think of her. And I think when you're concerned with what other people think of you, you're very critical of other people around you. And this is kind of what's happening to Issa. And so she hits a wall, and they're all kind of waiting around. And at one point, just before Nathan and Issa kind of have their reconciliation, I thought it was really funny that Nathan's friend was about to ghost him. And I really felt sorry for Nathan until we find out that apparently this friend of his, at some point in time, they sort of allowed him to live with them. And while he was living under their roof, he was kind of in and out of the place. He was leaving the door unlocked. Like, just a lot of sort of, his behavior was very unpredictable, to the point where they had to kick him out. And the way they justified kicking him out is making it seem like the wife wanted him out, when in fact his friend is the one that kind of made the decision to kick him out. And so as I'm listening to his friend describe why they kicked Nathan out of the house, it made a lot of sense. Right? And Nathan's ego was really hurt because he kind of invited his friend as a form of validation to kind of prove to him, like, hey, I'm not the guy that I was when I was with you. Like, give me a chance, I'm a different dude. But it seems like his friend, like, it'll take a lot longer for him to see. And it's very unfortunate, because if people know you, like, we all change and we all go through different phases. And I think it's very hard for people to change their opinion of you once they've seen you in a certain way. And that's sad to say. So it seems like this friend of his saw him at his worst, and it was very difficult for him to kind of recognize him at his best. And this was something very frustrating to Nathan. And so he goes off, he's very depressed, he doesn't know what to do, and Issa kind of gets in there, and she's like, hey, what's wrong? And they kind of have this conversation about, and he kind of admits to her, and I appreciated that he told her, he's like, listen, I've changed, I guess I just wanted his validation. And you can kind of get where Nathan is coming from, because on one side, he has this past that, you know, he's done his best to rectify. And on the flip side, so has Issa, right? Like, she's really trying her best to establish herself, do the best she can. And she wants to be seen in that light, right? So I think when Nathan ghosted her, she felt kind of used herself, right? She felt like, despite all my success, or despite, you know, my progress, the fact that he ghosted me suggests that he just didn't care. Like, he doesn't see her as someone who, like, has done anything. And he's kind of explaining, like, no, girl, I thought that's what you thought of me. And so she kind of admits, like, hey, I like you. I don't want to be your friend. And so I'm glad that she was able to openly admit it to him. And also the fact that she was able to say it, I think, speaks to how, because she's always been someone, Issa has always been someone to just say what she thinks. Like, she's not really someone to assume. And so throughout this episode, watching her assume different characteristics or like what people are thinking is very strange, because she literally hurt her own feelings. And so I think she just came out with it. And that must have been very scary for her, because again, this guy left her in the middle of the night and he could easily reject her, right? And so she kind of risks rejection, and thankfully things pay off. I really enjoyed this ending because it really speaks to how, at the end of the day, we all have something to prove, and we're all looking for validation, right? And we all change and we all grow, and we all want the people around us to validate our growth. And when somebody doesn't, especially when someone we respect doesn't, it really hurts our feelings, right? And I think Issa really respected Nathan to the point where him ghosting her made her feel like all the progress she had made wasn't worth it. Meanwhile, you know, Nathan got ghosted by his friends, so he feels like all the progress he made was totally invalidated. So it's just funny that we're all like struggling with the same things. And again, you can never assume what people are thinking, right? Like, whatever is bothering you is probably bothering that other person. And I really believe we have a tendency to hurt our own feelings in our own heads than, you know, happens sort of in reality or what's in front of us. So with that being said, thank you, and until next time.